Greetings, welcome to Brain Gauge channel. I'm Mark Tomerdal, and right now I'm going to talk about the Brain Gauge metric speed. Speed is derived from the reaction time test. Reaction time test is really simple. Somebody feels stimulus, they feel a vibration on one finger, and they respond as quickly as they can in whatever mode they want. Now, in some tests, some setups for the Brain Gauge, especially the older ones, the response is on a different hand than where the stimulus is felt. But basically, it's a very simple test. Everybody seems to understand what's going on with the reaction time test. And the reaction time, as I mentioned, shows up in the speed metric. So the speed metric here, and for this particular thing on the what you're saying is part of the analysis app, is that it looks pretty good. You say, well, where did it come from? It came from reaction time. And reaction time over here, the score, the actual score here is in milliseconds. So reaction time is a millisecond thing, and the smaller this number, the better, and the higher the speed number, the better, because that is basically scaled to normative values. From collecting lots of data. This 191, that puts you in the 10% rank of everyone that's tested on the Brain Gauge. That number is around 25,000 right now. So that number, gives you sort of an idea about where that puts people. And if you go to the literature, you'll see lots of different numbers for what reaction time should be, and we'll get into that in a minute. But the quick answer is reaction time. It's important to look at this number for a couple of reasons. Like I mentioned, this looks like they're pretty good. You know what? Super testers, we've seen below 150. So sometimes you might have somebody who's testing really, really well, and they might actually be off the charts, but they might improve from 190 to 170 to 150. That's important. On the other hand, if they're way outside the range, where below where the red mark, you see a red fifth percentile over here in the speed category, you might want to understand that and show them they're actually improving, because if maybe their score is 500 milliseconds and they improve from 500 to 400 to 300 before they finally pop up and start showing improvements from 5 to 10 to 15 to 20 over on the speed score. So, it's sometimes it's really good to be aware of those raw scores and take a look at it. And also the other thing to do, if you see a score here of say 3,000, that means 3,000 milliseconds is 3 seconds. And occasionally that means you need to look at that and say, oh, they didn't really understand what the reaction time is. And, the worst score I've ever seen was, I found out that someone was taking the test or administrating the test to someone, and they were sitting there with the person, and they said, okay, I heard them give the test, and they said, all right, did you feel anything? And the person taking the test said, yes, I felt, and said, okay, then now hit the button. Okay, having an administrator ask if you can feel the response and then telling you to hit a response button, that's way too slow. Okay, don't do that. Always let the person take the test themselves. But look at these scores just to do a double check if something seems out of whack, and gives you a little bit more information. So here's the fun part. Again, this is a short list. If you'll find other things that have a negative impact on the speed score and other things that have a positive impact on speed. But the negative impact on speed, that means things that make you get slower or make your reaction time increase. Here's a list, and just because the reaction time is high does not mean they have a concussion. Just because the reaction time is high does not mean they have the diabetes. But this whole list of things are things that can make your reaction time get worse. And you can always find things. I mean, there was a study recently on multitasking, and you can watch the video on it, on that one. But basically, that makes reaction time get worse as well, and it kind of shows you that multitasking is not really good for most people. Now, the more fun stuff to talk about is what can you do to improve your speed scores. and or make your reaction time faster. Fasting, exercise, caffeine intake, omega-3 intake, Tai Chi, okay. And when you see a paper, okay, these are like papers that have been done and written from research studies. That's because they were tracking people that started Tai Chi. Well, they could probably pick any martial art or any exercise or any kind of physical activity and gotten the same results. Dark chocolate consumption, that's obviously an acute effect, whereas exercise is a long-term effect. My favorite is electroshock feedback, because in that study, it was done back in the 70s, back when you could do that kind of thing. People were given a shock whenever they were too slow. So, it was like straight from that first scene of Ghostbusters. If they were too slow, they just got zapped. But anyway, speed drills, that's that's another way to actually improve performance. And the reason, and one thing to consider, is that the brain gauge reaction time test is actually a speed drill. So if you test a lot, like every day or a couple of times a day, you're going to get faster. And this is, as is well known in competitive sports and athletics, where people do speed drills. And the reason they do speed drills is to get faster. And that's so they can get off the blocks faster. They can respond quicker. But you do a speed drill, any kind of speed drill, anything that sits down and makes you think about responding quicker to a starter's gun, or responding quicker to anything, like in martial arts, responding to somebody's approach. But the speed drill does make you faster, and the brain gauge with frequent testing could be considered a speed drill, which will make you faster. But that's a good thing. You want to get faster, and you are actually getting quicker. So just a very, very brief talk about history of reaction time measures. We don't have to go a lot into how reaction time is collected, because people were collecting it very accurately back in the 1850s, 1860s, all the way up to 1950. Now, I give a little bit more explanation of this graph and accuracy and precision talk, or reaction time accuracy talks. But basically, the bottom line is we had pretty accurate reaction times collected in the literature. These are all from these data points are all from papers published between 1850 and current, 2020, 2022. Basically, we found reaction times of healthy controls, and you see this big drift in the last 30 to 40 years. And the reason for that is because of the introduction of the personal computer. And, that's really not a great thing to talk about to some people, because they get really offended that, they're collecting data that's 200, 300, 400 milliseconds in error. And, don't have a garbage in, garbage in and garbage out. You just can't clean your act up by using crappy methods. So anyway, the red line here is where the brain gauge averages are for the brain gauge studies. And you say they've been pretty constant, and that's because the brain gauge bypasses the computer system, both the hardware and the software. So just think about, if you've ever had a software update, that's slowing things down. And if you had a software update in the middle of a study or the middle of whatever, that would change things, but not for the brain gauge. It only changes things with other systems that do reaction time tests. Enough on that. You can check out other videos, other talks on that topic. So anyway, thank you for watching, and that is it for the reaction time and speed tutorial.